welcome back to this interview with Florival Mucave, the Executive Chairman of the Mozambican Oil and Gas Chamber. In the first part of our interview, we were talking about the updates to important developments in the sector, dealing with the expectations of people and businesses and the impact of COVID on the sector. Now, in this part of the interview, I wanted to ask first, I'd like to touch on some kind of sustainable development and environmental issues, because these have been top of mind, I think, for some people. And I want to ask Florival, what is it that gives you hope and makes you positive that Mozambique can follow a path of sustainable development and achieve broad-based economic growth through developing its gas resources?
Well, I have to start by saying that developing our natural resources in a sustainable and responsible manner is a challenge. I think for any developing country, because we tend to think that just by virtue of having those resources, all our problems will go away. And we sometimes don't realize the effort that has to be put into strategizing and having the proper policies and having the right people. And when I say the right people, I'm talking about people that are trained, that are capable of working in this industry. So you spoke, for instance, about environmental issues, about what makes me think that we can do it right. I mean, I'll start by saying that the advantage for Mozambique of starting to develop our natural gas later than most African countries is that we can learn from them. So there's a whole body of information that we can really tap into, that we can look into and say that, well, these were the pitfalls that other African countries fall into. And this is what we need to avoid. When we need to develop, when we get to a phase where we start exploiting our natural resources, I mean, there are clear decisions that need to be taken in Mozambique with regards to the revenues of oil and gas. I will start with that. It's very important that we realize that we'll need a sovereign fund to guarantee the transparency of the use of the revenues of oil and gas, to guarantee that the revenues of the oil and gas industry will benefit future generations. We need to do that. That's imperative. From an environmental point of view, I will say that we are lucky because the scrutiny of the NGOs, the scrutiny of our investors in Mozambique, as in the international oil companies, and what you'll call the checks and balances from the United Nations and other international bodies will compel us and force us to do things in a much more sustainable manner. It's not easy for a country like Mozambique, coming out of poverty, to start just adopting systems that will be perhaps onerous, but will guarantee that things are done in a sustainable manner. So it's important for us, Mozambique, and for the Mozambican government to look at what was done by other countries, what were the mistakes that were done, where are we today in terms of protection of the environment and climate change, what is it that we need to do today to protect the environment. And I have to start by telling you that Mozambique actually has suffered immensely of climate change. We had, just like last year, 2 major cyclones. One was Idai in Beira, and the other one, Kenneth, in Cabo Delgado, where the oil and gas projects are. So we have to prepare ourselves to deal with the challenges of climate change, even without having the oil and gas industry in Mozambique, because that is a challenge that we face, I would say almost annually, is endemic to Mozambique. However, it's important for us to realize that the benefit, any benefits emanating from the oil and gas industry will assist Mozambique with poverty alleviation. So we don't look as these two objectives as mutually exclusive. Either is the environment or is the oil and gas industry and poverty alleviation. Actually, we think that they're complementary. We think that we can still exploit our natural resources in a responsible and environmentally sustainable manner and use those resources for poverty alleviation and for preparing Mozambique for any climate change challenges. So really that's where we have to find the balance between the two, because very often you will have NGOs that will come and say that, well, actually, given the challenges of climate change, we don't think is worthy developing those natural resources. And that is a discourse that you cannot have in a country like Mozambique, because Mozambicans need jobs, Mozambicans need development, Mozambicans need to get out of poverty. So it's really a matter of poverty. How do we fight poverty? How do we make sure that poverty alleviation is a reality? And at the same time, face the issue of climate change and deal with them in a responsible and sustainable manner. So really that's a challenge that we're facing. And I think that we have to keep on working closely with the international community to be able to find that balance. And of course, we understand that gas is a transition source of energy. If we look at the traditional fossil fuels, like coal, like oil, that are much more dangerous to the environment than the gas is. So we can really also say that, well, we hope that gas will be that sort of transitory source of energy that will take us to renewables and allow us to leave coal and oil behind. But of course, we are aware that that is something that will not be done overnight. We think that the United Nations climate change objectives for 2040 and 2050 indicate clearly that this is not a challenge that will be done overnight. But we have to start thinking about it, and I agree, Mozambique has to be cognizant of those challenges and start working in a responsible way to deal with them.
And who are the partners that you as the Chamber and that Mozambique in general is working with that are sympathetic to this this vision of both alleviating poverty, the necessity of developing those natural resources, and actually assisting in developing those, whether through investment or other kinds of assistance?
We have some governments that have been working with us. I will say the UK government, the Norwegian government, the Swedish government, and some Swedish NGOs and some Norwegian NGOs that are very involved in Mozambique in assisting the Mozambican government in developing the resources in a sustainable manner. So we are pretty lucky to have those partners that will bring this experience that they have from other jurisdictions, from countries like, for instance, Norway, the UK, that develop oil and gas, that have a developed oil and gas industry, and that they can bring the experience to Mozambique and work with us in finding ways to do things in a sustainable and responsible manner.
And going back to, you were mentioning earlier about, best practices and pitfalls that other African countries have fallen into when developing natural resources. For Mozambique, what are the pitfalls that you've seen, specifically that you're trying to avoid now? And are there any particular, risks that are relevant for Mozambique?
Well, one of the biggest challenges for a country like Mozambique is the fact that we are a poor country. We are, by the United Nations standards, a least developed country. And this concept of the natural resources curse, and actually I'll call it some sort of, even the pre-curse, is reality to us. As soon as we know that we have these vast reserves, gas reserves in Mozambique, and as soon as the investors come to Mozambique and start, of course, telling us that Mozambique became sexy, our tendency is to go to international banks and start borrowing. And that's a serious pitfall, because we start borrowing before we start producing. And understanding the volatility of the oil and gas markets, we have absolutely no certainties and guarantees that the oil prices will be good enough for those companies to go through the FIDs and for us to start producing in the next 5 to 7 to 8 years. So that is a serious pitfall. An understandable one, but a pitfall nevertheless, because we just can't go out and start borrowing money based on resources that are not yet exploiting, and based on hypotheses of doing it in the next 4 to 5 years. That is one of them. Corruption is definitely a challenge that most countries face. And we are working on that in Mozambique. The Mozambican government has been very vocal in fighting corruption, which is very important. And of course, the lack of experience in this industry, which is new, is a new industry to Mozambique. So we have to go through the learning curve, and understanding that it will not be a race. It's really a marathon for us. We have to go through that difficult learning curve, and it takes its time. But we want to make sure that the Mozambican resources are developed in a responsible manner, that Mozambicans participate in this industry, that this industry is inclusive, and that more importantly, it will contribute to the betterment of the life of Mozambicans and the future generations.
And in that vein, as the chamber, or in general, what can you do, or what needs to be done to assist the local companies that want to, one, better understand the gas industry, and to actually, get the contracts with the oil and gas majors that will enable that kind of development. Can you speak about that a bit?
Yes. As I said, this is a new industry for Mozambique. So the secret for us really is to go out there and work with like-minded organizations that have the experience. And I'll give the example, for instance, of the African Energy Chamber, that has been extremely helpful to the Mozambican Oil and Gas Chamber in literally holding our hand and taking us through the journey of understanding the oil and gas industry, and how can we assist the Mozambican small and medium enterprises to be able to participate in this industry. There are projects that we have been thinking about. For instance, one of them that was shared with us by the African Energy Chamber, which is from agent to entrepreneur. Because you realize that being this a new industry, and being Mozambican, an economy that is still emergent, if we can even call it emergent. It's a very small economy, it's a least developed country. We need to be able to develop the skills of entrepreneurship. We need to be able to train the entrepreneurs of Mozambique to participate in this new industry. So this project of from agent to an entrepreneur is really for an agent, because when the foreign company comes to Mozambique and they take the Mozambican entrepreneur as a partner, from the onset, he's not a partner because of his skill set. He's a partner perhaps because he shows potential to be a partner once he understands the industry, once he has gone through that learning curve. So that is where the importance lies of being able to train this person, moving from that agent that is really, they're just doing the agency of representing the foreign investor, of introducing the foreign investor to the relevant authorities in Mozambique, to becoming an entrepreneur that understands the industry, that has a relevant skill set to be able to fully participate and contribute. So that is what the chamber is really doing, which is capacitating, creating the skill sets that will allow Mozambican companies, small and medium companies, to be able to participate in this industry along the value chain.
Great. We talk a lot about the major LNG projects, and of course that's the catalyst for everything that's going on. But there are quite a few interesting opportunities in Mozambique, I believe, that may lie outside of that focus on the Rovuma production and processing. Can you talk about any other opportunities that exist within the energy sphere in the market?
Hello.
Hi, Florival. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I think it's my internet.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'll start the question again. So
yes,
we've focused quite a lot on the major LNG projects, talking about Rovuma production and the processing of the gas, and that's been a major catalyst. That's really the main event in Mozambique.
Right.
But my understanding is there are other opportunities. There has been gas production in Mozambique before.
Yes.
And there is a lot of work to be done in the country. Could you maybe speak, either in a general or a specific sense about the opportunities that exist outside of those LNG developments or on the fringes of that?
Yes, I mean, one of the very big opportunities that we have in Mozambique. But before I go into the opportunities, I have to say that the Rovuma LNG project, or rather the Rovuma Basin projects, because we have 3 projects there right now. We have the floating LNG, we have the Area 1, the Total project, we have the Area 4, the ExxonMobil project. So these 3 projects situated in Rovuma Basin are not the first ones insofar as Mozambique is concerned. We actually had the first, we are producing gas as we speak in Mozambique, and not in the Rovuma Basin, but in central Mozambique, which is more central South Mozambique, which is the Panditimani area near Vilanculos. We have a South African company, Sasso, that is producing something like is producing gas as we speak. We're talking about more or less reserves of 2-3 TCF. Small reserves, but they've been producing that gas since 2004. And actually, there's a pipeline that leaves Panditimani and goes all the way to Secunda in South Africa. And of course, we have several projects that are attached to that pipeline and to that gas project from Pandetemani currently. And some of the biggest projects actually are power projects. So power is one of those projects that are gaining importance in Mozambique. Mozambique is situated, fortunately, in a region that has serious shortages of power. We know the challenge that South Africa faces in terms of power. We know that countries like Botswana rely a lot on coal for their production of power. We know that countries like Zambia don't have the resources to power itself. So we look at Mozambique as a country that not only has the potential, but has the capacity in the future, will have the capacity to provide power to those countries. So power generation is definitely one of the biggest opportunities for investors in Mozambique currently. And we have had in the last, I would say, 8 years, a few projects that are effectively proving the fact that Mozambique has the potential and that there's demand for power for Mozambique in the region. Agriculture is one of the projects that, or the industries rather, that Mozambique is seriously looking at. Agriculture is one of the pillars of the Mozambican economy. It's a fact that, I mean, today, the type of agriculture that we have is not mechanized, is not industrial agriculture, but we have great potential in terms of arable land, in terms of water, and more importantly, we have the capacity to convert gas into fertilizers. So once you convert the gas into fertilizers, we'll be able to increase the yield in terms of the returns on agricultural land that Mozambique will have and export food products. Mozambique today, we can say that it's a net importer of food products, and Mozambique has great potential to become a net importer, or a net exporter, sorry, is right now a net importer of food products, will definitely have the potential to become an exporter of food products. So we're extremely dependent on South Africa, something that we are almost certain will not happen in the next 10 years, 10 to 15 years, because of the potential that we have and the fact that this is an industry that has great potential to grow, and we can see investors coming already to Mozambique to invest in agriculture. Another one is tourism. Mozambique is a great, I mean, we have 2,400 kilometers of coast. We have magnificent islands. And we know that for a very long time, we have had international tourists coming to Mozambique. The challenge was the infrastructure, lack of infrastructure in Mozambique. And we know that now with the power generation and development of power in Mozambique and electricity, we'll be able to definitely take the infrastructure to the islands and to the remote areas. And that will clearly bring more international tourists. So tourism is also one of those industries that we can see great potential in terms of growth. So these are areas, I mean, amongst others, that we clearly see that in the next 10 to 15 years, they will grow considerably.
Thank you. I think let's wrap up now. I think, as you know, of course, the Mozambican Oil and Gas Chamber is a partner of the Mozambique Gas and Power 2021 event, yes, which we'll be holding next year. So, you know, we are working together to bring investors into Mozambique. You know, what would be your message to those international investors who are looking at coming into Mozambique for the conference and then potentially staying to work with you and your colleagues?
I mean, I will start by saying that this is the first conference of its nature, which combines not oil and gas, but power projects of this magnitude in Mozambique. We have absolutely no doubt that the number of opportunities that will be showcased at the conference will definitely not disappoint. Mozambique today is set to become one of the 5 biggest oil and gas producers in the next 20 to 30 years worldwide. And by coming to Mozambique at this stage or next year, they are becoming pioneers in an industry that is bound to grow considerably. So they are coming at the right time. The opportunities that Mozambique presents to them are immense. The only need that they have is actually to travel to Mozambique and acquaint themselves with opportunities that exist, because, like I said, it's various industries. It's a vast offer of opportunities in the oil and gas industry, in the power industry, in the tourism industry, in the agricultural industry. And this is the right time for them to come to Mozambique and invest. There may be a perception of Mozambique facing a few challenges in terms of security. It's important to bring that up, that yes, although there have been some skirmishes in Cabo Delgado in northern Mozambique, the situation is not out of hand. Not only the companies that have invested there continue to show confidence in the projects, but the government has been working tirelessly with the neighboring countries in order to stop the small focus of violence that still exists in that area. So we have absolutely no doubt that the situation will be controlled. We have absolutely no doubt that Mozambique offers great opportunities for investors, and that the time to invest in Mozambique is the right one.
Wonderful.
There's a small issue that I would like to bring to your attention, which is the issue of local content that we did not touch on. Is one of the issues that the chamber also is somehow very involved in discussing with the government and with the private sector. And it's important to understand that for Mozambique, local content is not an hindrance and shall not be a hindrance to foreign investment. We look at local content actually as a way to ensure the inclusive participation of Mozambicans in the oil and gas industry, but we look at the oil and gas industry from the same optics as the investor would look, in a sense that we look at projects that are done on budget and on time. Of course, also making sure that Mozambicans participate, but never in a way that it affects the projects by any stretch of imagination in a negative way.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you very much, Florival Mucave, Executive Chairman, Mozambican Oil and Gas Chamber, Speaking to Africa Oil and Power. We look forward to seeing you in Maputo, and thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.